Hello everyone, welcome to our digital presentation. Today we will talk about the company Target. Target is a renowned Australian brand. It was founded on 1926, 95 years ago from today. The story of Target is a fairy tale now. The company has faced so many ups and downs within its business operations. Target has closed 75 of its stores across Australia. 25 of them shut down permanently. 50 of them has been converted into Kmart. The COVID-19 coronavirus has made a massive damage to the Australian businesses. Target is the victim of one of them. Actually, once profit-making king in Australian retail market, Target has been destroyed with its huge loss due to the coronavirus. Let's get into the events that causes Target companies shut down across Australia. Before shutting down the company, we have seen the reduced market price on the products of its companies. Also, Target works for the community and offered them free of its products for the low earnings people. Target company has migrated its employees into Kmart, Bunnings and Officeworks. Thousands of its workers were out of job during the pandemic. Target couldn't allocate them. Government were offering JobKeeper. Thanks to the Kmart that was backing up Target while its store closure across Australia. 25 famous Australian Target stores were closed permanently, as mentioned earlier. 62 Queensland stores were announced to be closed in future. Moving forward, in this section, we will explain the political, environmental, socio-cultural, technological and legal factors that affect the market of Target. So let's get started with the pastel analysis. Then my groupmate Kimberly will explain the Porter's frameworks. In today's changing retail landscape, an increasing number of consumers are purchasing products online. The retail chain department store Target has been seeing a significant earning drops due to the coronavirus pandemic. Armidale, Atherton, Pages Marsh, Bairnsdale, New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria. All the stores of Target has been closed due to the massive profit loss in the pandemic. Let's move into the competitors. Target Australia's biggest competitors in nowadays Sportsgirl, Gazeman, Officeworks, Sushi, Intersports, Daiso, Retail Zoo and also the Nortura. The most biggest competitors of Target in Australia are Myer and David Jones. As Australian consumers are like quality over quantity, let's move into the legal factors. Australia is a country of law. In this country, for the retail environment, there is ACCC, Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. The Australian consumer law sets out consumers' rights that are called consumers' guarantees. This include their rights to repair, replacement or refund. The Fair Work Commission also is there. Its main task is to provide education, assistance, advice and guidance to its employers, employees, outworker entities and the organizations. Let's move into the socio-cultural factors that affected Target very heavily. As mentioned earlier, acceptance of internet commerce, advertising preferences, age distributions, buying habits, comfort with technology, customer service expectation, disposable income levels, and education levels that all affected target very heavily. And let's move into the technological factors, which is the most important factors. The development and adoption of mobile technology presents many opportunities for Target. The growing desire for internet connectivity has given Target an opportunity to rebrand their retail store and stand out from the competition by providing free Wi-Fi. Although everyone is offering the same, but mobile payments has been slowly introduced to the departmental store Target. Let's move into the political factors. As earlier mentioned, Australia is a country of law. It often changes its regulation. Australia is a country of political stability, but still there is a mitigation risk. Mitigation risk means buying political risk insurance in a way to manage political risk. Thank you everyone. Let's welcome my teammate Kate.
Thank you, Fahim, for inviting me to speak after your wonderful presentation. This part of the presentation will cover responses by Target that were unsuccessful and sometimes counterproductive, and the recommended counter strategies. This will be covered over 3 slides of unsuccessful strategies and 1 slide of recommendation. This specific slide of the unsuccessful response quite ignores consumers' desires that came across in the form of purchases, because when Target first entered the market there was much speculation that it was quote-unquote suicide for them, and looking at it now it seems to be quite correct. See, Target was originally successful in this idea when they brought in high-quality designers, high-profile designers, including Gok Wan, Jean-Paul Gaultier, Stella McCartney, etc., etc. The customers who were into fashion trends such as young women, men, those tending to be towards their 20s to 30s, potentially even higher or lower, would normally take these lines made by these designers that they cared so much about and suddenly had access to them, in which case would cause repeat sales every time a new line came out. However, when Target took away this whole, and I quote, "shop with us if you want exclusive designer products without the cost," it quite possibly forced those clients, consumers, who were giving money to Target to suddenly give it to competitors, to Kmart, and to those all around them instead. This unsuccessful response focuses on the neglect of Target instead of the maintenance of Target. The strategy to redevelop Kmart from Wesfarmers, the owners of Target brands such as Target and Kmart, was to keep Target's success going with minimal effort while focusing everything into redeveloping Kmart, just so they, I assume, get the best out of both worlds. However, the neglect of Target's maintenance of this successful sales turns out to be a lot more detrimental to them overall. Kmart now has trending brands, it is very well known, it's more talked about than Target even. And the fact that all of this was just left under the rug to collect dust is honestly quite confusing from Wesfarmers. The third unsuccessful response from Target somewhat correlates to the first slide, in which it ignores what consumers are wanting and what they're saying they're wanting in regards to this whole trend of generic branding. Now, the point of generic branding is to be cheaper because you're not necessarily paying for the brand at that point and just the product. For example, Coles has their own line of bleach, bread, and whatnot, and it is cheaper than the usual products. It is cheaper than the usual multigrain products. It is cheaper than the bleach companies, and overall that's the whole purpose. So what Target did was adapt this strategy, and just like Kmart did. However, Kmart lowered its prices with this generic branding like it was supposed to, yet Target has always had a higher price range. This premium price range automatically decided to backfire on itself because it took the consumer's knowledge of what generic pricing is and what it does to the price tag, and sort of just threw it out the window. The fact that the strategy wasn't quite deployed correctly overall shows how Wesfarmers is quite narrowly spread out, and that needs to be looked at. After looking at the previous 3 slides and the unsuccessful strategies that Target has previously attempted to employ, we will now be looking at the recommended strategies with potential of growth. Specifically, the first option is, as on the slideshow in the first bullet point, it's not enough to slap 2 different logos on your brands and leave it up to your consumers to position you. Both Kmart and Target need to have specific goals. After Kmart's revamp, it seemed to be clear. They target younger consumers, such as children, teenagers, young adults, and they've gone with colors, slogans, jumping on relatable trends, especially with the color pop. And Target, however, is just kind of somewhere in between. They seem to be targeting elderly, young adult, and they really need to hone in on what they want to go for. Kmart has itself set with its generic branding and its cheap prices, and honestly I believe Target should go back to being premium with premium designer lines for being released. This has the opportunity to bring back those who they have lost when they essentially got rid of these designer lines without necessarily communicating if they had asked consumers beforehand if that is what they wanted, or without really giving much explanation as to why they stopped it. Another option for Wesfarmers would be to keep doing as they are, except in a much larger scale, leaving very few Target stores to go to in person and turning it into a much more online-based specialist, for lack of better words. Another reason why that would work out is the pandemic that's currently going on, encouraging a lot more online shopping, and just the pure convenience of it that the younger generation has seems to have found. Essentially, they could also sell off Target and take the earnings from the sales and keep putting that into Kmart, or potentially starting up another brand. Wesfarmers tends to have a history of selling what doesn't work out. Thank you for listening, and I will pass the mic over to Kimberly.